What's up, guys? It's episode 4 on the RE podcast. We got a special guest today, Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
What's up?
Today we're going to be talking about marathon versus the sprint in the contextualization of missions around the world and in your community.
Right now, and I'm like, I've got 2 things of water sitting right next to me, and Sean's literally just pointing.
I need my water.
Apparently, I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, dude. Today's podcast sponsored by. So one of the so I want to get into this, but I kind of want to set up the conversation because I feel like this is I feel like this is huge. I feel like as a church and as a culture, we have this way that we do missions, and that is typically like we are in a building and we're with our people, and then we pack our suitcases and we go to another community, typically somewhere else in the world that's outside of the United States. And we are there for roughly about 10 days, and we do as many like children's church services and night services and prayer services, and we build it as we can, and we maybe build a building or help fix up a church or something like that while we're there. And then after the 10 days is up, we pack our suitcases back up and we go back to our homes, back to our churches, back to our jobs and our lives. And I feel like that's one way of doing missions, but this is very short term. And as we look at the United States and as we look at our country and where we're at, we need to start thinking about missions as a long-term thing, not just overseas, but also here in the United States. Really excited today to have our friend Aaron with us, who is going to be doing missions overseas, and we're going to talk with him in a few minutes about kind of how he got connected with doing this, and what that looks like for him and how he's preparing for it. But I feel like it really is parallel to what we're doing here in the United States, or how we need to be looking at urban church plans, or even some suburban and rural church plans about how we're the need to not look at planting a church as a 10-day experience, but as a long-term thing. And kind of what I was talking to a friend of ours the other day. Actually, a friend of ours, his wife was telling me this story. He wasn't telling me the story, but basically what she was saying is that so our friend was like running a 5K, right? He hates running, but he wanted to do it anyway. He's running a 5K with his son, and so when the gun goes off, he takes off from the starting line and just starts booking it as fast as he possibly can. I mean, running this thing out as hard as he possibly can, that's when the newspapers were there, and they were right there at the start, and so they took his picture and everything, and so it looks like he's just leading the pack, he's just ahead of everybody. Well, he basically busted out ahead of the pack for about 150 meters or so, and ended up finishing with the old ladies in the back because he had totally given everything out in the beginning and could not sustain the race, couldn't sustain himself for more of a marathon, more of a 5K than trying to run just like a short sprint. And so I feel like it's the same thing with us in the church in the way that we look at and do missions. We need to start looking at missions, especially long-term missions. If you're going to move into a community and you're going to plant a church, you're going to plant a ministry, you're going to do something, then I think we need to start looking at the difference between doing ministry as in I'm going to be there for a long time. I'm not just going to I can't just get there and hit the ground running and just start throwing Jesus at everybody that I see. I really need to start learning the culture, and I really need to look at this thing as a marathon and pace myself for the work that's ahead, and not just throw everything out there in the first 10 days, because you're not leaving after that. The plan is to stay. And so I kind of want to frame the conversation today around that idea. So with that, I'm gonna let Aaron introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he's got going on and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually getting ready to move over to the Middle East, leave in less than a month now, and it's been a journey just getting up to this point. There's been a lot of preparation, a lot of training, and a lot of sweat and hard work going into just the preparation to even go to the field. So I grew up actually overseas. My parents were missionaries in the South Pacific, and then we ended up moving to San Diego, and they were working in Mexico. So I've had this exposure to long-term missions and short-term missions, because in Mexico we work with a lot of teams that come down and do short-term missions. So as I was kind of figuring out, like, what am I called to do? What's my role in this? How can I partner with God in reaching the world? And just really just being like an 18-year-old going like, am I just going to do missions because my parents did missions, or am I going to do my own thing? I had these experiences that God just pointed me into the direction of long-term missions, and I had no idea how that was going to happen. But I knew I needed to study, and so I went to Bible college, and just like any good evangelical missionary kid is going to do, and study the Bible. But luckily, I had these experiences in LA where I met students from Saudi Arabia. I met students from China, from all over the world, but it got me like starting to have a burden for the unreached, even more than I had ever had before, even after all of my years of being on the mission field. But meeting this guy from Saudi Arabia and him just telling me about his background and explaining Islam and explaining what it's like to be in Saudi Arabia just led me to have a burden, have a heart for the people of the Middle East. And a little bit about his story. He ended up giving his life to the Lord. It was just amazing. He was so open. And he told me this one day. He was like, he actually went to this church and he said, "Aaron, I felt the Holy Spirit." And so I was so excited. I prayed with him. He received Jesus, and then we started doing Bible studies together. And then, like, probably 3 months later, I couldn't get a hold of him. And come to find out, he left the country and he gave back the Arabic Bible that he had. He just couldn't do it. He couldn't keep going, following Jesus. The pressure of feeling like his parents or somebody was catching on that he had become a Christian, and that he was going to bring this shame upon his family. So that experience was heartbreaking, but it did nothing but just give me more of a desire to go to the Middle East. So anyways, all of that to say, I launched into this time of preparation. I did study abroad in Jerusalem, where I fell in love with the Palestinian people. I did study abroad in Turkey, where I got to have this experience of learning some Turkish, and also worked with refugees from Syria. And so then I applied for this missions position and decided to move over there and just dedicate my life to working in the Middle East.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
That's cool. And don't you have an alias?
I do have an alias,
which we're not going to mention
resent.
because...
But this, yes, I do have one. And I resent it, but I know it's necessary.
But that's, I mean, getting people to understand the gravity of how serious this is. I mean, there are parts of the world that you go to that, this is not legal. Like, this is not a thing that you do. You don't share the gospel with people. You're not allowed to. And so
Right.
when you go into areas like that, you have to take safety precautions. You have to be...
Yeah, you do.
So getting people to understand the gravity of...
You have to be careful of what you post on Facebook or Instagram, or even wrestling with the idea, should I even have an Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's cool, man. And I think, like, one of the things that... And I think... So when we moved here to Detroit, we were one of those, we were like kind of looking at just out the gate, boots on the ground, hit the ground running, as quick as we can. Like, we need a building, we need a church, we need this, we need that. And God just like put a cap on that, like really quick for us. And so when we started really praying and we started really looking at the city and we started really looking at the needs of the community, we really started to look at ourselves and think of ourselves less like just like church planters and more like missionaries to Detroit.
Yeah,
people who came to
absolutely.
Detroit to learn the culture, to learn the context in which people here could understand the gospel and could try to deliver the message of Jesus in a way that resonates with community and culture here in Detroit. But unless you know the community and the culture, there's no way that you can do that you can kind of share that message in a way that's going to resonate with people. And so when we started talking, I thought it was really interesting. Like, what are your plans for the first year that you're over there?
Yeah, I mean, at least the first year is literally just going to learn the language, because I've been learning over the years, ever since I met that guy from Saudi Arabia. I'm starting to learn and prepare as the Lord's put this on my heart. But yeah, I mean, it's like a lifelong learning. Like, even think of learning English. Like, I'm still learning English, and I'm an American. So with another language, if you really want to even get to a place where you can just have basic conversations with people, show them that you care, be able to even just have anything beyond like a surface level conversation, you have to know their language. You have to have more than just a basic, hey, how are you? Level.
Where's the bathroom?
Exactly. Where's the bathroom?
I need food.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that we learned when we're going out of the country on vacation.
Yeah.
And we put an article up. If you go to rechurchmag.com, you can check out an article called 0 Year. And basically it's about this. It's basically about the need to unplug from the activity of the church, not from like witnessing or sharing the gospel with people or talking to people about Jesus. Like, we're not saying like, hey, for a year don't mention Jesus.
Yeah.
But we're talking about unplugging from the typical activity of a church. Like, I'm not going to hold a children's event this year. I'm not going to, like, when you move to a new place, you move to a new city, when you move to a new country, taking that opportunity, taking that year to like either get a job or like join, neighborhood organizations and social clubs, or like figure out a way to integrate yourself into the community, learn what it is, learn how it is that the people of that community interact, what it is that they need, what they're looking for, and how the gospel could resonate in their life. And then after that, start really focusing in on, what are some things now that I can do? Now that I know the community, I'm a part of the community. Now what are some things that I can do to help bring the gospel to the people that God's called me to? So if you get a chance, rechurchmag.com, check out the article 0 Year. It goes into a little bit about how to do a 0 year. And if you've done one and then launched into ministry, I'd love to hear it. So hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, the whole nine. So
I had a couple different overseas workers who had planted churches in the Middle East. Really stressed that. Like, they said, at least for the first year or even 2-3 years, don't start anything. They're just like, don't try and launch anything. Just learn language, just learn culture. So the kind of ministry that I can do in the first couple of years, if I do any kind of quote-unquote ministry, it's just going to be anything like super relational, so that I can really just learn about the people and be able to practice my Arabic. So I'm not just going to be like studying Arabic in the books, just like with my head in the books every day, go home. But what kind of impact can I actually be just as a learner? Like, people respect that. When you go to another culture and people see that you care and that you just you can go into their homes and sit with them, and you're trying to learn about their culture, trying to learn their language, asking questions, people really respect that.
Well, I think we've even seen that here in Detroit. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I mean, people moving, like Detroit is like, you know, I mean, obviously, like it's got the you know, the social media title right now, like America's comeback city. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here. But there's a lot of new people moving here, and a lot of people that have lived here that are like, you know, they find it very disrespectful for you to look at Detroit and say, man, it's a blank slate. Like I can do whatever I want there. It's going to be crazy. And you realize, well, there's 700,000 people that already are here. You know,
Right.
like you can come or not come, and it really wouldn't matter. And it's been definitely a lot more resonating, I feel like, for residents here when you take the time to learn the people, learn the neighborhood, learn the culture, you know, learn what already exists here in Detroit, and then think about how can I make my mark. You know, how can I do what it is that God's calling me to do here in the city. So let's talk about like this in the like somebody moving to what are some practical ways, like some practical things, like let's say I'm not moving overseas. So, you know, language isn't going to be a barrier. So I'm not going to spend, you know, I'm not going to, even though my English may not be great, I'm still not going to spend a year just learning English, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm moving to like, you know, Miami or LA or Cleveland, or, you know, like I'm moving somewhere, you know, in the United States that's different to me culturally, and I'm going with the purpose of planting a church. What are some practical things that people can take away that would help them to integrate with their community, to learn their culture, and to have more of the maximum impact that they can when they do launch their church, rather than just, you know, going in and, you know, hey neighborhood, I have everything that you need, and the neighborhood's like, well, we don't even know you. How could you possibly know what we need?
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, what are some thoughts? We'll kind of throw that out. Practical ideas, things that people can do to get to know their neighborhood, get to know people.
Well, like you said, they need to learn about what the people need. So actually getting to know people, just like inviting neighbors into your home for a meal. You're just trying to get into social circles, and then of course just like going to coffee shops if you like coffee, which I love coffee, and talking to people, getting to know like leaders in the neighborhood, leaders in the community. I mean, you can go to like city hall meetings, you know, you can go just get into anything that's going on like in the community. There's going to be, any community you go to, there's going to be leaders that are already doing things. There's going to be stuff going on, whether it's really good or not, like, but it's
happening.
There's stuff happening. So just figure out like where are people coming together, and what are people doing already to try and maybe make an impact in the community.
And you mentioned something about like being a learner, you know, going to the Middle East and saying like, I'm going to be like for at least the first year, I'm a learner, like, and probably for longer than that, because like you said, you know, you're still learning English, even though you're
right.
You know, if we're you know, are from here.
Yeah, go to these meetings or get into these social groups, and don't say anything. I mean, of course, you have to say something. You have to get to know people, but don't give like your input. Think that, you know, oh, I'm going to give them this idea and it's just going to change everything. Like, go in there and just listen, and yeah, you might feel like you're not doing anything. You might get discouraged. Like, am I actually making a difference here? But just having that perseverance, like in a marathon, to just keep going.
Yeah. Just know that the slow pace that you have right now and what you're in, the calculated moves that you're making right now, are going to pay off in the end.
Exactly.
You know, it's not, you know, it's because it is when you're church planting, when you're, you know, you're becoming a missionary either here in the United States to a city here in the United States or overseas. It's a race. Like, everything is a race. I mean, there's a reason the Bible, you know, likens this, you know, this walk on, you know, unto a race. You know, I mean, we're running this race, and we just have to choose what kind of race are we going to run. Are we going to run the sprint, or are we just like all out, you know, throw everything we got? And for 10-day missions trips, like, by all means, like, sprint away. You know, do your thing. If you're going to go plant a church somewhere, you're going to like start a ministry somewhere, you're moving to a new city to have some sort of an impact, locally, potentially even globally, then you have to think about like, I'm here for the long haul, and so I need to make calculated steps now. That may feel like I may look at the front of the line, the front of the pack right now, and go, man, I am nowhere near the front of the pack. But knowing that this is a long-term thing for me, not a short-term, so I can't judge what I'm doing based on how I feel right now in the moment, because I am doing things that are setting me up for success long-term, as opposed to just making one single quick short-term impact and then leaving. And I think that's and I think that's key. So I mean, in any type of ministry that you're trying to do, that would be that would be a focus. You'd be focused on what are you there for, how long are you there for, and then you can kind of judge, okay, am I supposed to just like do everything I can right now because I'm only here for a week, or am I here for 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 30 years, and if that's the case, then you really need to pace yourself.
Well, I think too, even with just church plants in general, I mean, they seem to be like, I guess you could say, the new thing in the church world. It's like, if you're not planting a church, then what are you really doing?
Yeah.
It's kind of my
Oh, you're still a youth pastor?
Like,
you haven't left to plant a church yet?
Everyone wants to plant a church, whether they feel God-led to do so or not, because, well, why wouldn't it be God-led? That's what we're supposed to do.
It's romanticized.
But all these people planting churches have a great mindset, and their heart is probably in it. But the way they kind of go about it, I think this conversation lends itself to talk about, let's say, I mean, in Detroit, so where we live, right? We have people out an hour away in the suburbs, and they feel led to come plant a church in the city to, change the city because the city sucks and it's coming back, but, we've got God and we need to go give that to those people there. So they basically make a model of what they're doing out in the burbs an hour away and come into the city, and quote unquote plant a church somewhere, so they get a house or whatever it may be, or they build a building or they renovate a building. Some of them do a horrible job at renovating buildings, just whatever.
Seen that.
But so they bring their model of how they do church, sort of like, Aaron, if you were to say, okay, well, I'm going to go build a church, like I know how to do a church, but I'm going to do it overseas. Well, if you go overseas, you can't probably do that because you're not going to have anyone, and you may even die doing it because they're going to be like, nope.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to know the parallel between going overseas and like everything changing versus going an hour away to plant a church and everything changing within cultures and communities.
Well, we were at a business event last night, and they were it was a panel, and they were talking about networking, and one of the questions that came up was basically from somebody who lives in the suburbs around Detroit, and she asked the question so what advice do you have for somebody who lives in the suburbs but wants to launch a business in Detroit? And one of the panelists, literally, she picks up the microphone and she says, my advice to you would be to move here. And then, drops the mic on the table, just mic drops. If you're not here, it's hard for you to understand what it is that we need. And it's the same thing in every community, in every city around the United States and around the world. If you are not there, it's hard for you to understand what that community needs. So we have this arrogance, especially I feel like in the United States, where we go into a place and, like Sean, like you're saying, church planting is just the thing to do. I'm going to plant a church. That's what I'm going to do.
I mean, for good reason, not like a thing.
No, it is. But and the heart that people have behind it is sincere. This is my mission. And it may very well be the mission that God has for you. But my thought is, and especially in getting to know Aaron a little bit and talking to him about his mission and what God's calling him to do, overseas, and really paralleling that to what we're doing here in the United States. My caution is don't just rush into a city and colonize it. We're not rushing into a city to take over a culture and transform it into the culture that we know. We're rushing into a city to learn that culture, to adapt to that culture, and then to figure out how that culture identifies with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then give that culture the gospel in a way that they'll understand it. And I think and we miss that here in the United States. We miss that here in church plants here, here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, I think because of whether it's subconscious or just straight up conscious thing. Like, we do have this arrogance where we think, I'm going somewhere to give these people something because I have it to give. Like, I have the answer. So you need to look like me at the end of the day, and you need to attend my church and sing the 3 songs and pay your tithes and, not curse and don't go to bars and, like, all these things. It needs to fit in that thing. Like, that is what the gospel is. Well, that's not what the gospel is. And when you go to a community where that doesn't work, and like the people will not accept that just for face value because they don't know you, then it's like, okay, well, you need to kind of step back and like get off your high horse and realize you're not the Calvary coming in to like, change this people group. Like, God's going to change them, and it might not be something like you're used to in a typical church.
Yeah.
Because we're very used to someone comes on Sunday, the Holy Ghost moves, or whatever. They say a prayer, they're saved. Woohoo! Sweet, let's do it again next week. And now we're just like a factory for creating like Christians. And like, we want to bring that to, a foreign place, whether it's 30 minutes away, 5 minutes away, across the globe. And it's not always, probably not even mostly, how to do ministry, So I think it's super interesting that whole thing. Like,
well, and I want to raise a point, and then I want to.
Before you do that, because let me finish this thing.
Yeah.
Like, when we don't do that, and we do come from another place to do this thing, and then it's like, okay, you should really just kind of take it easy, step back, don't like overwork yourself. Because let's be honest, the people that church plant churches are the ones who do most of the work anyway. They're always doers. They're always doing more than they should. And it's like this grind, go. So it's super foreign to not do that and to feel like you're not doing anything of value.
Right.
Yeah.
Taking your time.
Well, I think that, and much to your point, like learning about the place that you're going before you start doing anything. Like, one of the things that we found out when we moved to Detroit is like, there is a ton of bars here. Like, there's a ton of bars here. And like, so when we started the first like small group that we ever started, we actually started in a bar. It's contrary to what most churches think and do. And the idea that it was like, we want to reach people where they're at. Well, when there are bars on like every corner, like, it's one of those things where you like, wow, let's start a group. Like, we're going to start a group. Let's do it in the bar, And so, starting there and starting in a bar.
Yeah.
And I think but if you don't take the chance to learn your community and you just go by with like what you know of church from your past. And if I would have done that, I never would have started a group in a bar. Like, it never would have been a thought that I had, because my thought would have been, well, I'm going to stay away from going over there because it's not where we're supposed to be. But in reality, it's like where all the people go. It's like, it's where everybody's at in Detroit on the weekends. Yeah. And like there are, that's what we have here.
Yeah.
We do bars and we do it well, and so it's like, so that's where people congregate. And so really finding where people congregate and learning how to be there, be among community and figure that out. And then I want to kind of raise a balance issue.
So what would you say to people who would say, okay, well, that's great and all, but you just feel like, you're called to go minister to people in bars so that you can feel okay about drinking?
Well, it's a good question.
Honestly, because
people will think that.
Well, people have to.
You're just trying to validate going to bars and hanging out and drinking.
Yes, and I think people have to know. Obviously, people have to know. I don't me personally. I don't have a problem with drinking. I don't have an issue with it. But the purpose for going to a bar, but because I don't have an issue with it, honestly, I've got 4 kids, and I'm at 34 years old though. I feel like I'm an old man sometimes. I'm I work, and we start businesses. We try to plant groups and churches and, reach out to people. I got 4 kids. I got to go back and forth to school and all of this stuff. At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And if I'm going to have a beer, I'd rather go to the liquor store down the street from my house and pick up a 6-pack and bring it back home and sit down and just relax than go to like the
Turned
go
up.
to the bar, you know? I mean, like, I'm not
Yeah.
20 anymore, you know?
Yeah.
It's not a thing toward 21 anymore, 21 anymore. You know, like, I'm not, disclaimer, you know, in this country, you have to be 21 to drink. But I've lived a lot of life, I've done a lot of stuff. I feel like I'm super young at 34, but, like, I'm not 20 something anymore, you know? I'm not, like, looking at, like, oh man, I just worked all day, did this, went to the gym, came home, it's 9 o'clock, time to go to the bar. It's like, no, 9 o'clock, it's time to go to bed, you know? Like, I mean, that's like, when you go to the bar, you know? So for me, like, planning a group in a bar never would have been about the drinking experience, because I would have rather gone, grabbed a six-pack, and came home and just, like, watch TV or, like, ate a pizza or, like, something like that.
Yeah.
Not go to the bar. The bar was about community. It was about, like, hey, here's my neighborhood where we have 3 churches and nobody goes to church on Sunday mornings at all. And we have, like, 6 bars you can walk to, and, like,
That
they're
are always
packed out all the time. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, so if we're going to have an impact in community, let's go be where the community is. So rather than going to the church on the corner and seeing what I can do over there to help with the children's ministry or whatever, like, we're like, well, if we're going to start a group, let's start a group where people are. Let's start bringing people together where people congregate in the community, because we had these open dialogue and discussions with a lot of people in the neighborhoods and the community that are not saved, that are not followers of Jesus, that really opened our eyes to, like, what is Detroit? What does it mean to be a Detroiter? What does it mean to live here? Like, what are your struggles? Like, what are you dealing with? And we've really been able to shape, some of, like, the outreach and the things that we've done in the last, couple of years around those conversations. And so for me, totally not about, like, validating drinking, because I don't have an issue with that. It was really about, like, I got to get, like, off my butt and get in the community, and that is where my community is. So I'm going to go. And even if you go to a bar and there's nothing wrong with going to a bar and drinking a Coke. Like, you don't have to drink. If you don't want to drink, don't drink. We have a friend of ours who goes with us to all the events and everything that we do, and he doesn't drink, and it's not a big deal, Like, I think that's one of the things you need to understand, and this is going to be a podcast eventually too, because this whole drinking thing is a big deal. But, like, drink, don't drink, like, whatever side of the fence that you're on, that's not the conversation. That's not what we're, our conversation is not about whether or not you feel like it's okay to drink. Our conversation is about, like, if you move into a city where everybody goes to the bar, well, go to the bar and order a Coke and sit there and talk to people. Be where Jesus was, where people were. Jesus was where people were, and so go to the bar, order a Coke, grab a water, do something like that, and get to know people and get to know your community if that's where people are hanging out. Obviously, if you live in a neighborhood where you have a bar and nobody ever goes there, then probably don't start a group in the bar, because the whole focus is about where are people. I want to be near people, because then I can learn my community quicker. I can learn their faults and their hardships and what they're going through, and possibly even be and learn how to be a better witness for the gospel of Jesus in their life, because I got to know them. So be by people. That was the whole reason why we started that in the first place.
That's good.
And I feel like that's the same with you, man. I mean, going overseas and just finding ways to be around the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. So we'll kind of look to wind this down, wrap up a little bit. Final thoughts?
Well, as far as prep goes, and even just learning the culture and learning the place that you're going before you even arrive there, this has really been an interesting opportunity for me, being here in the Detroit, Hamtramck area, and it's been so valuable to come here and to begin these relationships with refugees that came from Syria, and begin to understand what are their needs, what are their fears, what are the things that they went through in their experience. Because if I'm gonna make any kind of impact with refugees, like from Syria or from Afghanistan or from Iraq, I need to understand what are these people like, and are these people a threat or are these people real people who have families and have hopes and dreams for their families, and really just want to live peacefully and be able to provide for their families. So, I just wanted to leave you guys with that bit of experience and preparation for moving to the Middle East that I've been able to experience here in Detroit, Hamtramck area, because it's been amazing. And getting to know these people and spending hours and hours and hours with them, sitting and drinking tea in their living room, and then just helping them with basic things like getting their kids enrolled in school, has been such a rewarding experience, and something that I would never have had if I just went straight into the Middle East and just went straight into trying to do this, start this program. I wouldn't have had those hours of sitting there and drinking tea, trying to learn Arabic, and trying to piece together this complex, crazy story of how this family got from home Syria in the middle of this war 4 years ago, down to Jordan, and then made it over to Detroit. So, spending time with people, and that just, it pays off. Spending lots and lots of time with people.
Well, that's cool, man.
Well, I think that's the goal. So whether you are in a community right now and realize you don't know anything about your community, if you're looking at church planting here in the United States or doing some sort of ministry here in the U.S., or you're looking to go overseas, I think that advice applies to all of us, to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, spend time with people. Find out where people are in your neighborhood, in your community. Spend time with people, as much time as you can afford to spend with people. I don't feel like going out tonight, but I'm going to go to the restaurant anyway, or I'm going to go to this, the neighborhood block party anyway, or I'm going to go to this event anyway, because I need to be around people so that I can learn my community. I can learn the stories of the people in my community, and I'm better equipped to minister the gospel to them because I learned them first and didn't just go in with any sort of assumptions or preconceived ideas of who they are and what they need. I think it's awesome. I love the idea. Love what you're doing, man. We're going to be praying for you and everything. I know you're going to have an awesome impact over there. And I look forward to hearing all about it and then sharing it with you guys too on the podcast and kind of what's happening. Maybe we'll do some sort of phone podcast in the future.
Yeah, follow it. Cool.
Just kind of see what's going on. So anyway, Sean, you got anything you want to add, man?
No, man, just check out the website, www.rechurchmag.com. You can check out our articles. I would definitely check out the 0 Year article. It's a pretty good one that goes along with everything we're talking about right now. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, and soon to be iTunes. So that's going to be pretty cool.
And everything we have is basically /ReChurchMag. So if you go to Facebook, you go to Twitter, it's /ReChurchMag. So yeah, check us, hit us up on social media. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know your thoughts, your questions. We're going to frame all of this stuff around the questions of our listeners. So you got questions about church planting, missions, ministry, sharing the gospel in general with communities, or whatever it is that has to do with multiplying church, multiplying ministry. Share that out. We want to hear it. We want to know what you're doing and what you think and what your questions are, so that we can start to really build this community of people who are following after Jesus and making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. So, all right, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the RE podcast, and we will look forward to talking to you again next time.
Peace.